Hi, I'm Manya Gupta and welcome to ThePrint. While visiting Noida for a news debate on Real Estate Regulation and Development Authority Bill, Rajya Sabha Select Committee Chairman Anil Madhav Dave remembered an uncanny experience.
चैनल ने मुझे बुलाया नोएडा में कि आप हमारे यहाँ डिबेट में आइए। मैं गया तो रास्ते में मैंने देखा कि लोग एक फोल्डिंग टेंट्स के अंदर चीख चीख करके प्लॉट बेचने और प्लॉट खरीद लो ऐसा चिल्ला रहे थे। मेरे लिए पहला दृश्य था। मैंने अपने जो लेने आए थे चैनल के उनसे पूछा ये क्या बेच रहे हैं, क्योंकि मेरे दिमाग में कल्पना थी कि भोपाल या इंदौर के अंदर बस स्टैंड के बाहर पूड़ी सब्जी वाले एक रस्सी पकड़ करके चिल्लाते हैं, आ जाओ मेरी दुकान में आ जाओ, पूड़ी सब्जी लो। तो मैंने समझा ऐसा ही कुछ तो नहीं बेच रहे हैं, लेकिन उन्होंने कहा नहीं, ये फ्लैट बेच रहे हैं। और मैंने कहा 1-2 लाख के बेच रहे? बोले नहीं, 25 लाख 50 लाख 1 करोड़ के फ्लैट बेच रहे हैं।
Such was the frenzy that in cities like Noida, flats priced between rupees 50 lakh and rupees 1 crore were being sold like vegetables in a sabzi mandi. It was a heady period, one of irrational exuberance around the real estate boom in India, characterized by lack of trust, a buyerless market, and scores of half finished ghost homes. It soon became unsustainable. But prior to that, the 90s had come as a breath of fresh air for the industry after decades of excessive government oversight. Following the economic reforms of 1991, the real estate sector underwent a sea of transformation. Economic barriers became porous, not so invisible hand of government regulation eased, and foreign direct investment swarmed the sector. But by the mid 2000s, the sector had reached its peak. A casual stroll through any major metro would have revealed an unrecognizable landscape. Huge swathes of earth lay dug up, while brick and concrete lined the horizon. It was a construction boom buoyed by rising middle class incomes and growing aspirations. Owning a home, perhaps even too suddenly, seemed possible. In many ways, it was the Wild West era for Indian real estate. What followed was unbridled construction, soaring prices, and the emergence of concrete skeletons across the urban landscapes. Mega townships were built on land to which developers often did not hold clear titles. Eager home buyers fell prey to dubious schemes, lining up to book dream houses whose existence was often confined to glossy brochures. The final blow of the global financial crisis of 2008, a critical demand supply disequilibrium across the real estate sector set in. And with that, the house of cards came crashing down. The next phase of the saga was a story of defaulting builders, bankruptcy filings, endless legal battles, and shattered dreams. Newspaper headlines and news channels alike flash reports of buyers' discontent. Scores of aggrieved buyers ran from pillar to post, knocking on every possible door and waiting helplessly in court galleries. Years passed with no relief in sight. All they wanted was a house of their own. But how did RERA suddenly become a household name? Was it just the supply side vagaries that necessitated its birth? Or was a larger storm already brewing in the background?
The problem was that there was delays, and delays were without the consent of the home buyers. And builder used to take, there was only one legal requirement for the builders to go, and whatever delay they have done, they will give you interest. That was the provision in the contract. But delay was never ending, so interest was also, you will never get it, because the agreement was designed in such a way that you will get interest only when you get possession. So neither you are getting possession, because there is delays and after delays, and therefore you are not also not getting your house and not getting any compensation. So home buyers were not getting anything. So number one. Number two, there was also a problem of illegal changes in sanction plan. You were told at the time of booking that there will be only 3, say, towers, and there will be a whole huge football field, playing area for kids, jogging track, swimming pool. But once you have booked the apartment there, going forward after a year or two, suddenly you will find that entire area or football field or a jogging track has now been converted into another tower, and the builder will be constructing 2 more towers. So your open area has gone down, you will hardly get any space. Now same open space will be shared by, where say before it were 100 people, now the 2 tower more has come, so it becomes some 150 or 160 people. So your area of common area, share of common area has gone down. So this was another problem, that builder were making changes without any consent. Then there was diversion. So builder has taken money from you. Now that money should be utilized for the construction and completion of the project. However, the pressure on the builder to divert the fund to maybe for making a land bank, or maybe for some other reason that he only can explain, and there was a fund diversion, and therefore the project for which he is taking money is not getting completed, it is only getting extended, delays. And whenever you are approaching to builder, he say, why are you worried, there is a clause in the agreement that you will be getting interest, so we will pay you interest, and that time never used to come. Beside that, there were also a problem of one-sided clauses. As you know, earlier there was a clause in the agreement that if you have delayed, say, paying of EMI, you will be required to pay interest at the rate of 18%. Whereas if a builder has delayed giving possession or a delivery of your house, he will pay say 10% or 8% or 12%. So huge gap of 6, 8, 10%. Earlier it was much more. Later on it was reduced, but the gap was still too much. So there was a one-sided agreement. Then there was a problem of pre-launch. People were buying, there was no official, no document, nothing. Builder has simply launched on a paper and people used to buy it, and then maybe project has never taken off. So these were the issues which we were grappling before RERA.
After depleting their years of saving, what they got in return was mounting uncertainty, years of litigation, shattered dreams, and the crushing double burden of EMIs and rent. With that began the lengthy and cumbersome process of consensus building. The stakeholders were many, and so was the cacophony of competing voices. Creating balance, albeit a delicate one, was paramount. The government was clear in its objective to infuse greater transparency and accountability to the sector, check the asymmetry of information, and provide a fast track dispute resolution mechanism. However, questions of inclusivity and reaching the last man echoed from the opposition circles in the parliament.
So, if that is the crux, then why are we limiting ourselves to this square meter area in a city, in the poorer sections? So, the plot area is very small. So, are we going to keep them out? Are we going to keep those consumers out? Please agree with us, because this whole act, this bill is in favor of the consumer.
The second major point of contention somewhat revolved around a familiar fault line in the Indian politics. Concerns about centre encroaching upon domains traditionally reserved for the states resurfaced. Some of the strongest opposition came from the southern states. By highlighting how the bill eats into already limited powers of the states, Aryokia Swamy William Rabi Bernard from AIADMK categorically opposed the bill in toto. The union government, however, argued otherwise. Arun Kumar Misra, former Secretary of Ministry of Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviation, told ThePrint that following examination by the Law Department, entry 6746 of the concurrent list of the 7th schedule gave the centre the authority to legislate in this regard. The disagreement, however, was short-lived. States eventually became enthusiastic partners in the process and began rowing in the same direction. However, the other side of the spectrum was no less vocal. Developers too had their own list of reservations, with regulatory bottlenecks among their biggest concerns. Speaking to ThePrint, former CREDAI president Geetambar Anand cleared the common misconception that the industry never opposed the idea of regulation and had actually been advocating for transparency and accountability. The only concern was purely about balance. It took some persuasion, concessions, and many more rounds of deliberation. Yet, the dialogue remained collaborative. Anand further told ThePrint that the industry wasn't there to push back, but rather strongly championed mandatory project registration to weed out fly-by-night operators who were building without permissions and tarnishing the reputation of entire industry. In a sector already weighed down by cumbersome approvals and regulatory bottlenecks, RERA was viewed as yet another addition to the growing alphabet soup of regulators. Speaking to ThePrint, Anshuman Magazine chairman and CEO, India, Southeast Asia, Middle East, and Africa, CBRE, said that the biggest concern among the developers was sudden introduction of a regime disclosure, escrow discipline, and delivery accountability into a sector that had wide operational flexibility. Such rules would increase the compliance burden and restrict the freedom of execution. But for the government, regulation was seen as a necessary response to the sector's growing complexities. And it was out of this very crisis that RERA emerged. Under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government and after scrutiny by parliamentary committees, the bill received presidential assent on 25th March 2016. The act was widely seen as a much awaited reform. It was greeted with celebration, hope, and optimism across the sector.
Here, sir, the consumer, according to me, shall be the king. As had happened in the sectors like telecom, after a regulatory mechanism has been put in place. When there is a king, there got to be a queen also. The queen obviously is the developer. And there shall be a happy marriage between the king and the queen. For both to live happily ever after. This bill seeks to address the maladies of the sector by putting in place a regulatory mechanism. Sir, it is not a regulation. It's only a regulation, not a strangulation.
10 years on, one might wonder, was it a happy marriage after all? Or has it been an awkward marriage of convenience, bound by law, still searching for common ground? Through state-level real estate regulatory authorities and appellate tribunals, it aimed to rectify persistent inefficiencies, infuse greater accountability, and strengthen consumer protection. Shruti Kumar, partner at Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas and company, told ThePrint that RERA created a disclosure-based regime requiring key project information such as layout plans, carpet areas, timelines, and the RERA registration number to be publicly available on online portals with quarterly updates. Projects could no longer be sold or even advertised without registration, and any changes to approved plans required the consent of two-thirds of allottees. It has, to a considerable extent, achieved that objective. Yet, significant administrative blind spots remain, and a closer look reveals somewhat an uneven picture.
RERA under Section 6 had made the provision that maximum extension can be which can be given to a builder cannot exceed more than 1 year. So there is a cap now. If anybody wants to take extension, that has to be only maximum 1 year. That too, that cap is not as a birthright of the builder that every builder will come and say, no, I can delay project up to 1 year. Extension is not granted as a birthright. Extension under 6 is granted only because of force majeure reason. So this is how the provisions of RERA has been misused, and it is all because authorities have facilitated that part. They are not implementing the act in letter and spirit. 3, if you see, of RERA, that says that no project can be launched, market or advertised before registering the project. So that was the purpose, that if anybody wants to launch a project, he has to go and register it. But what the builders are doing, they are still continuing with this process of pre-launch sales, which is illegal. Now coming to the other part, fund diversion. So that is, if you see the RERA section 4.2 LD, that talks about that 70% of the project's fund has to be deposited into the RERA separate account, and that money can only be withdrawn for the purpose of the project. And for withdrawal also, whatever money you have withdrawn, that has to be certified by a chartered accountant. But here also you will find that builders are manipulating. There are many certificates. There is no cross checks which authorities are relying upon. Checks and balances are there in the RERA Act. However, because the authorities are not properly implementing in the letter and in the spirit and the provisions of the Act, and that is why the malpractices which I am talking about still continue.
The uncomfortable reality is this: several states have underperformed on even the most basic mandates of the Act. As of June 2026, several northeastern states, including Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Mizoram, and Sikkim, as well as the Union Territory of Ladakh, are yet to establish permanent RERAs, despite this being the Act's most basic mandates. States like Nagaland have fallen short on another cornerstone of the Act: creation of dedicated RERA websites, which form the backbone of the Act's transparency agenda. The portals were meant to empower buyers to make informed choices based on facts rather than promises. An even more damning assessment came from the Chief Justice of India, Surya.
It is high time the states should, all the states should revisit and rethink of constituting even this authority.
That's the problem.
In every state, these
Yes,
have
your
become a
logics are right.
rehabilitation center. And these are all, these not authority, these are all occupied by these persons. This is high time the state must reconsider. The people for whom this institution was created, they are completely depressed, disgusted, and disappointed. None of them is getting any effective relief.
Within a few years of the Act's enforcement, reports of growing discontent had begun surfacing once again. For developers, too, the regulatory handcuffs often felt like a flawed triumph. The job remains unfinished. Anand told ThePrint that while RERA has been an absolutely transformative success story, but by definition, reform is a continuous process. He further added that if housing supply is hindered as a result of bureaucratic red tape, prices skyrocket and the home buyer is the one who ultimately suffers. Several approval authorities, including urban local bodies, fire departments, and environmental regulators, remain outside RERA's ambit. Therefore, RERA has not by itself eliminated approval delays. And the promise of ease of doing business remains constrained by the very same approval bottlenecks that existed prior to RERA. RERA has rewritten the rules of the game. Yet the vital truth is that real estate is a robust engine of growth and job creation. While rules are essential, impractical rules choke supply. But the journey is far from complete. So, what lies ahead? It should be less about new laws and more about sharper, more consistent implementation, time bound clearances, and faster dispute resolution. Magazine told ThePrint that fintech enabled escrow management, API based fund tracking, and automated milestone disbursals should be implemented to drive transparency at scale.
We expected many builders to come up in every municipality, every state, and that has not happened. In fact, the reverse has happened. Uh, Even those who were delivering something are mostly the guys who are in jail or something. So the area has become more constricted. Most of the small players have left. That is an area which requires attention. And one way it can be improved is if we improve and make more transparent the pre-approval processes and improve that part so that more and more builders, more and more developers can come in. They become entrepreneurs. And the second area, honestly, when you introduced a particular section there for brokers, for the real estate brokers, the idea was twofold. The idea was that a buyer deals with a person who is accountable under law. So the community of the brokers are the real estate agents. They need to be professionalized. So we introduced a particular section in which we thought that rather than looking at state level or national level solutions, we found local solutions. Engage professionals who can deal with the buyers and the developers and come to localized solutions.
The happy marriage that Naidu envisioned remains a work in progress. RERA's first decade laid down the ground rules. The next decade, however, will determine whether those rules can evolve into a relation built on enduring trust. Thank you and keep watching The Print.